The storm had been building all evening as Jake Morrison drove his old pickup truck down the winding country road, heading home after a double shift at the construction site. At 34, he was used to long days and late nights, doing whatever it took to provide for his 8-year-old daughter Emma, who was staying with his neighbor while he worked the extra hours they desperately needed. The rain was coming down in sheets now, making visibility nearly impossible as Jake carefully navigated the treacherous curves. That was when he saw the headlights spinning wildly ahead, followed by the sickening sound of metal crushing against metal, and then an eerie silence broken only by the drumming rain. Jake immediately pulled over and grabbed the emergency kit he always kept in his truck, running toward what remained of a luxury sedan that had clearly skidded off the wet road and collided with a large oak tree. Steam rose from the crumpled hood and he could see a figure slumped over the steering wheel. "Hello, can you hear me?" Jake called out as he reached the driver's side door, which was partially crushed but still accessible. Inside, he found a young woman, probably in her late 20s with blonde hair and blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. She was conscious but clearly disoriented. "I need to call for help," she mumbled, trying to reach for her phone with shaking hands. "Ma'am, I need you to stay still," Jake said gently but firmly. "You might have injuries that could get worse if you move. I'm going to call 911, but first let me check if you are hurt anywhere else." Jake quickly assessed her condition, noting that while she appeared to have some cuts and bruises, she was alert and did not seem to have any obviously broken bones. The car, however, was in much worse shape, with the engine smoking ominously. "We need to get you out of there," Jake said, noting the smell of gasoline mixing with the rain. "Can you move your arms and legs?" "I think so," the woman replied, wincing as she shifted position. "Everything hurts, but nothing feels broken." Jake carefully helped her out of the wreckage, supporting her weight as they moved away from the damaged vehicle. The rain was still pouring down, soaking them both within seconds, but Jake was more concerned about getting her to safety than staying dry. "My name is Jake," he said as he helped her sit down on a relatively dry patch of ground beneath a large tree. "I'm going to call for an ambulance, but it might take a while to get here in this storm." "I am Victoria," she replied, her voice still shaky. "Thank you for stopping. I do not know what I would have done if you had not come along." Jake used his cell phone to call 911, though the connection was weak due to the remote location and severe weather. While they waited for help to arrive, he used his jacket to shield Victoria from the worst of the rain, despite the fact that it left him completely exposed to the storm. "You do not have to do that," Victoria protested, noticing his sacrifice. "You are getting soaked." "I will be fine," Jake replied simply. "You are hurt, and keeping you warm and dry is more important right now." As the minutes passed, Jake learned that Victoria had been driving back to the city from a business meeting when the storm hit. She was clearly well educated and spoke with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in control. But the accident had left her vulnerable and dependent on the kindness of a stranger. "Do you have family I should call?" Jake asked, noting that Victoria seemed to be traveling alone. "Not really," Victoria replied with a sadness that surprised him. "I have business associates, employees, but no one who would be worried about me personally if I did not come home tonight." Jake found this hard to believe given Victoria's obvious intelligence and poise, but he did not pry. Instead, he continued to do what he could to keep her comfortable while they waited for emergency respondents to navigate the storm-flooded roads. When the ambulance finally arrived, 40 minutes after the accident, Jake helped the paramedics transfer Victoria to the stretcher and provided them with all the information he had about her condition and the circumstances of the crash. "Thank you," Victoria said as they prepared to transport her to the hospital. "I do not know how to repay you for what you did tonight." "You do not owe me anything," Jake replied. "I am just glad you are going to be okay." 3 days later, Jake was surprised to receive a visit from a well-dressed woman who introduced herself as Margaret Walsh, Victoria's personal assistant. "Miss Chen would like to see you," Margaret explained. "She's recovering well, but she has been asking about the man who helped her after the accident. Would you be willing to visit her at the hospital?" Jake was hesitant to take time off work, But something about Victoria's situation had stayed with him since the night of the accident. When he arrived at the private hospital room, he found Victoria looking much better than she had during the storm, though she still bore visible signs of her ordeal. "Jake," she said with obvious relief. "I was hoping I would get the chance to thank you properly." "You already thanked me," Jake replied. "I am just glad to see you are recovering well." "Jake, I need to tell you something about myself," Victoria said seriously. "I was not entirely honest with you that night, not intentionally, but because the circumstances did not really allow for detailed explanations." Jake waited for her to continue. "I am Victoria Chen, and I own Chen Industries. We develop medical software for hospitals. The business meeting I was returning from that night was actually a negotiation to sell my company for $200 million. Jake stared at her, processing this information. "You are a millionaire." "I am," Victoria confirmed, "which makes what you did that night even more remarkable. You helped me without knowing anything about my financial situation. You risked your own safety and comfort for someone you had never met, expecting nothing in return." Jake was quiet for a moment, then said, "Victoria, your money does not change what happened that night. You were hurt and needed help. That is all that mattered to me." Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes at his simple honesty. "Jake, that is exactly why I wanted to see you again. In my world, most people are interested in what I can do for them financially. You are the first person in years who helped me, just because I needed help." Over the next several weeks, as Victoria recovered from her injuries, she and Jake developed a friendship that surprised both of them. Victoria learned about Jake's struggles as a single father, his dedication to providing for Emma, and his dreams of maybe someday starting his own construction business. Jake learned about Victoria's loneliness despite her success, her dedication to developing medical technology that could help people, and her growing realization that wealth without meaningful relationships felt hollow. "Jake," Victoria said one evening as they sat in her garden watching Emma play with the elaborate swing set Victoria had installed specifically for her visits, "I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" Jake asked, though he had learned to be cautious about Victoria's generous offers. "I want you to let me help you start your construction business," Victoria said. "Not as charity, but as an investment in someone I believe in. You have shown me integrity, kindness, and the kind of character that makes for successful business partnerships." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Victoria, you have already done too much for us. The medical bills from Emma's asthma treatments, the new apartment, the car repairs. I cannot keep accepting your help." "You are not accepting charity," Victoria replied firmly. "You are accepting the gratitude of someone whose life you saved, and the investment of someone who has come to care about your success and happiness." Jake looked at this woman who had transformed his understanding of what it meant to be successful, and realized that somewhere along the way, gratitude had become something much deeper. "Victoria, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you talk about caring about my success and happiness, are you talking as a friend or as something more?" Victoria smiled, reaching for his hand. "I am talking as someone who discovered that the most valuable thing I gained from that accident was not my life, but the chance to share it with someone who sees me for who I am, rather than what I own." 1 year later, Jake and Victoria were married in a small ceremony attended by Emma, who served as flower girl, and the close friends who had watched their relationship grow from a chance encounter into a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine love. "You know," Victoria said to Jake as they danced at their reception, "I used to think success meant building something impressive. Now I think it means building something beautiful with someone who makes you want to be your best self." Jake smiled, thinking about the stormy night that had brought them together. Sometimes the most important rescues happen not just in emergencies, but in the everyday choice to care about someone else's well-being as much as your own. Sometimes love arrives not through careful planning or social introductions, but through moments of crisis where we discover that helping someone else can save us both.